So welcome to the Node.js Node API team meeting for July 19th, 2024. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the issues that were tagged for milestone 11, the longest milestone ever. And I will share my screen here. So before we get started, any announcements or news that people would like to share? I guess the only other thing, the only I can't remember if I mentioned this already, but we sometimes track the downloads on for Node add-on API, and it's gotten to the point where it's now like pretty much the same as NAND. So in terms of adoption, we can see that like the trend of people using Node add-on API continues, which is great. So in terms of the sort of issues like coverage, debug testing, NoSQLite, experimental message, anything we should discuss this week on those? Okay, if not, let's take a quick look at our stale issues. Where? Stale issues, okay. I don't think we have anything new on that. So then let's dive into the issues in the repos. Okay, pull requests. Ah, no. Okay, this does remind me though. There was one like in the new workflow we added. It doesn't pin the version of the action using hashes like this. So just like the report card that the security team runs, it mentioned that as like cost a few points. So that's something I'm going to try and there's like this step security thing. So I should try and create a PR to pin that one. But otherwise, I just see a couple of these that I can go ahead and land. And then this one on the no GC types, anything we should discuss?
Yes, I did want to discuss one point. Because I did see that Gabe's PR of the renaming is basically in core has been reviewed and looks pretty good to everyone.
Yeah.
Um, excuse me. The one thing that I wanted to talk about was that, and we brought it up a couple of weeks ago, was that the possibility of adding a flag to Node add-on API to to force finalizers to be of the basic prototype. Because if you're using the C API, right, like once you opt into experimental without the opt-out flag, right, you are forced to update all of your C-based callbacks to be of the basic finalizers, right? And you're required to do that, but that's because it's C-based, right? And now we're in the C++ world where we're not required to do that. We can, have either basic or extended finalizers. Um, but we lose the ability for the developer to have a compile time safeguard that at compile time, all of the finalizers are basic. And I think that is something that we should consider.
So I
Uh,
think
my,
if I understand what you're saying, it's like because of what we've got, if they write code which requires a non-basic finalizer, we'll automatically do that for them. But it might
Correct.
not be what they want.
Correct.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
right
Interesting.
now, all of our tests that have finalizers, they are basically all the extended finalizers.
Right.
And what if a developer wants to go, I want to make sure at compile time, all of my finalizers are basic. So then they just, maybe define node add-on API, require basic finalizers in their node JIPy, and then if they have one that's extended, it would have a compile time error.
Uh, it, I have two kind of thoughts that are contrary to each other.
Okay.
So it's kind of a dichotomy. On the one hand, you're right that that would be a good idea, that would be equivalent to um, uh, what we do um, in core, right? Um, but not the forcing them to have basic finalizers, but rather the hiding of parts of the API that they don't want to see, right? Like for example, if you choose an API version 6, then you're not going to see anything in 7, 8, or 9 or 10 or experimental, right? Similarly here, if you were to specify this option, we could just hide the parts that are an API env, right? Like you don't see those APIs. Like we put those in conditionals, and then you don't see them, and your code doesn't compile anymore, right?
But
So
but this only applies to finalizers, right? So those would be callable, like they're allowed to be called other places, just not in the finalizers. So I
right,
think
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. In this case, it would not be APIs that are hidden. It would be function signatures. Like a function that accepts an extended finalizer wouldn't exist as far as the API surface is concerned because it got defined out
And
by
that is how it would be that I would implement it if we
right.
have this sort of defined flag. Yeah.
Yeah, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, uh, if unlike the C API, folks that are not experiencing any problems, they don't need to use the basic finalizers, right? And so they can go one at a time, like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I need a basic one for this. It's still everything still compiles and runs, but I'm going to switch this one thing out because that fixes my memory leak, you know?
What about people that are not aware that they have a memory leak?
yeah, I'm more like we wouldn't make it the default. Like I don't think we want to force people into this because like I think we want to make it so that if it
Right.
just works, it just works. And like then that flows into Gabriel's part. Like if they run into a problem, they can fix it. But I don't think it costs us much to have a
To
define that says only basic finalizers. And that then as a developer, I can say like if I want to start conservative, I
mhm.
can define this. And now I know that I'm only
Oh,
using basic finalizers and
oh,
I'm great, right?
sorry, they're
And
early. I gotta go.
okay,
Okay.
sorry.
Right. But going back to Gabe's point a little bit of how he was saying, oh, I can't remember. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, it really would not be that big of an implementation on our side. We would make the default behavior that we accept both types of finalizers so that it's a non-breaking change. So the developer has to explicitly say, require all
Yeah,
finalizers. And honestly, the way that Gabe said that it would just be, hidden definitions of functions, that would be the implementation. The creation of tests would take longer than making the implementation, really. But I think it would be a good thing to have.
just in terms of hiding the functions, it'll only hide them if you're in a finalizer though, right?
Yes, it would
Yeah.
hide the wrapper function that we have, the
Okay.
the post finalized wrapper.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Like I like unless it was like, hey, this is a huge maintenance burden, it just seems like a good tool to give people.
Yeah, I really don't think it should be like I haven't got thought like gone and done any real implementation, but just thinking about it, it's just, hiding some of our internal wrappers. So no real implementation maintenance issues with that. So now that I've discussed that, I'll implement that and then have to update the documentation again.
Again,
Uh,
you don't, this could still, like, if this was ready to land minus that, you could easily do that in a follow-on one. Like, I don't mind if you pull it in, but just throwing out there that you don't have to wait and
Okay, could it be piecewise? Yes, because it would just be an additional define that adds behavior of
yeah, it would
restrict.
basically hide
Okay,
some stuff. Anyway,
yeah.
whichever way you want to do it, but I just wanted to throw that out there that like
Mhm.
doesn't have to
Yeah,
be part of the initial
okay.
one, I don't think anyway.
And then you did have some comments recently, and I did comment back, and I don't know, I haven't had time to look if there were, so it would be near the end.
Okay, sure.
Um, yes, here. So the quotes are what you said, and then those are
Right.
my responses. So the first one was that you would remove what I have in this documentation saying it will only occur if using experimental, right?
Right,
Um,
and that's going to change over time.
right, but
So
so what I was trying to convey with my message is that it's based off of like it's a the core is deciding whether or not, like it, it's not something that if
right, like
you
I'm trying to like from I was trying to my thought process was like this isn't even a promise that anything changes, right? Like we're just saying, hey, if you do this, the engine may be able to be more efficient, right? And more optimal. And so whether or not it actually does anything isn't really like doesn't really matter. It's like even if today we did nothing, it would still be some instruction says, hey, if you do this, you may get better performance. And maybe today it does nothing, tomorrow it does do something. Um, So like trying it to like, hey, this thing which is like a concrete, like today it won't do anything less nappy experimental is there, but tomorrow that might not
I
be true. Like when we promote it, it may happen by default. And so like just saying nothing is probably the best because like we're not promising anything. We're just saying do this. If it's possible to give you better behavior, you may get better behavior, right? And like that'll be true forever, hopefully.
okay, yeah, all right, that makes sense. And then the second point was you said in terms of can we explain without promising it will run outside of GC collection?
Very,
Yeah.
very similar. Like it's that's the specific benefit you might get today, but like we don't guarantee, I don't think we want to guarantee that because some engine may not be able to implement it such that that's true for some reason. Like
Okay.
the only way it can be finalized is during the GC thing. So I'm just trying to keep our promises such that like any engine can implement it. And in the worst case, you get no benefit from doing it at all, and like no GC and the basic or full are exactly the same.
Okay.
But for the ones where you can do better, we do better, right? And just wording it in that way, so it's not like, hey, you get this, this, and this. It's like you will get off them. For example, you might be able
Mhm.
to not, the engine might be able to avoid running during the GC.
Okay, I understand that. But now so I took the what I wrote based
Yeah,
off of this link, and it says that Node API post finalizer held such that Node API is outside of the GC finalization. And what I wanted to do is sort of document that what this function does based off of what Node API says it does. And if you look at the name, it explicitly says post finalizer. So that really means that it's a guarantee that this function will call after your finalizer runs. If it doesn't, then then this function is not conforming to Node API.
Okay, so Node API post finalizer helps to work around providing an add-on to defer calls to point outside of GC finalization. I would wonder if we could reword that too. Like the question, it just comes back to like, do we want to force every engine to have to implement that versus it being, if it can do better, it will do better, right? Like,
I see. So maybe we should rename the underlying node API is what you're thinking.
well, post final, yeah. So I think the name Node API post finalizer. So post finalizer, I see the name kind of ties it to finalizer, right? So by
Exactly.
the so normally what happens is you call that, like you use that to do code that will happen outside of the current finalization logic, right?
Right. And that current finalization logic is running during a garbage collection cycle. So you want to run it outside of that
Right.
post. And I think that might
Yeah.
be, I think it's having an API specifically to run after the finalizer is beneficial. So maybe I don't think we should rename that.
Yeah. So I mean, so then it's like we're committing that there's always the ability to do that.
Yeah. So every engine has to allow attaching a callback to run after garbage collection. And I think that's fair.
Right. I mean, what we really need is that while we're running in the finalizer, we can run some code through, we can run JavaScript code through because if I remember correctly, like it's not really that it's in the finalizer, it's that we can't run JavaScript in the finalizer in V8, right?
In V8, we cannot run JavaScript. Yes, in
So
the
if there was some
finalizer
other
during
engine
garbage.
where,
Yeah.
so if there was some other engine where that was possible,
I guess most not. Like I know for sure, like Hermes engine does not allow you to run anything like
right?
that. It's pretty much it's all about this managed memory, and garbage collector runs our callback. It's usually in some inconsistent state.
Right. But Michael, your point does make sense. Like if there were some engine that does allow that, what would end up happening is the it wouldn't be affected here. It would be affected in the APIs that are used inside of a finalizer. Because right now, our V8 finalizers, you would not be able to use run script, right? But a different engine, you would be able to call run script in the
Well,
finalizer.
it's more that like I could see in if there was a mythical
Mhm.
this node API post finalizer could be a no-op. Or like maybe not a no-op. It could run your JavaScript immediately in the scope at basically when you call it instead of deferring,
Exact. Yes, it could do
right?
that.
Right. So then you wouldn't be outside of the finalizer, right? And so like what we really need is that you can run JavaScript. We don't care when it runs. And if we could run it in the finalizer, it would be even better to run it immediately, right? It's just that we can't, so we're deferring it. Um, Now, if we go back to like no GC, no thing is ever gonna be in that case, I don't think we want to spend a huge amount of time, and we've already named it, so I'm okay. I was just like, the lower the promise we can make and the less constraints we can have, then that's, for optimization, that's generally good. So
Okay.
I would be like, it's sort of like, I don't know whether there's value in making it any different. Like I don't think we want to change the name because like that's, but whether having the description of it say like it's going to maximize, I guess, and it's not in this case, it's not maximize the likelihood because that's not really. It's more like it triggers.
Yeah, it's a guarantee that this callback happens after garbage collection. At some point after garbage collection. That's what it is.
It's basically you call this to run code you couldn't otherwise. It allows you to run code you couldn't otherwise run in a file.
Yeah.
So, like, if I was thinking the description today, like top of my head, it would be, the Node AP post finalizer allows you to schedule code that might not be able to be run in the finalizer itself. Right.
Yeah,
and then
okay.
the schedule basically says, well, it might happen immediately, it might happen later, or it might.
Right. So the term post finalizer, it's not saying the finalizer of the context of garbage collection. It's post finalizer of your finalizer callback, I
Right.
guess.
Right.
Right. Like we're saying after. Okay.
So
That makes
maybe we just change the description, right? Like it basically,
yeah.
like we don't have to say defer. We could say schedule calls. Say the post filter helps to work around the summarization, by allowing the add-on to schedule calls to um to Node APIs to a point. I don't even like we don't necessarily need time such that they can run. I don't know. Yeah, I don't have the right words on the top of my head, but
Right. Maybe
like we
we
don't
could.
have to promise that it's outside the finalizer because that's not really the key thing. It's just like you could schedule this code to run, and maybe it's like beware it may run sometime later after the file, it may run sometime later after your function completes. Or even I
Right.
would say like most often this will be sometime after your function completes or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Not a huge deal. Like we could also just leave it to what you have and then change them both. Like have a conversation later to change them both because it's like you're consistent, as you pointed out, it's consistent with what's in core, so
Yeah,
that's good
that's
too,
fair.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that, the function name can stay the same, but changing the description may be beneficial. And but like leaving it how it is also fine, and scheduling a time in the future to
Yeah,
change if need be,
yeah.
I think that works.
Okay.
So then what I have is the first point is removing that whole differentiation. Da, 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 da. Okay, there's that, and then deciding there's the flag of opting in to requiring basic finalizers, and then deciding whether we want to include that now or not. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for all that. Lots of
Mhm.
interesting discussions on this one for sure. Thanks for pushing that
Mhm.
ahead.
I will add a comment about our talk. So
That's
we don't
good.
forget. Yeah.
Any thoughts? I don't see there's any new issues, any of them that we should chat about? Okay, if not, I'm gonna just flip over to the node one. Oops. Okay, this one we talked about. And anybody? I see that Chenzong's already jumped into that one, so he's pushing it forward. I don't know if there's anything to chat about. This one, I think we touched base with on, maybe not. I think we looked at this. It's just a matter of if somebody had some time. We could take a look. I haven't seen if this is like a tight loop or something where we're doing a million of them or what, but
Yeah, I haven't had time to look either.
yeah. I can't imagine we do a whole lot other than wrap the like the node thing to create an external buffer, right? So like other than I think sometimes external buffers cause copies. Let's see here. External. Guess that's buffer. Oh, no, I didn't quite get to the right one. E?
I think it's in Node API, right? Or not?
That's a no. Okay, right, right. That does make more sense because it's node related. Good point. All right, so let's create external buffer. So the question would be whether the time is in this or in this, right?
Yeah, we do quite a few member allocations. I don't know like on what scale we slow down. Like it's because
Like
of
you
this
mean
extra
in
member
this
allocation. Yeah.
finalizer bit or in the
Right. Yeah, this node buffer new is also may get some impact. It's quite a few member allocations there as well.
right, but this would like this is just like this is the node function. If you create an external, if you create one of those, I think there's nothing, it's not node API related, right? That just like node is slowing it creating external buffers.
Mm.
That's why I was interested. It's like, is this overhead that we've added in Node add-on API, and it looks like this would be the major piece, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's only additional allocation we do.
So like, I'm gonna just comment that like, I'm sure he's already looked at it. We built. I assume we could just comment out this and we just have a memory leak.
And also they're complaining about slowness, not necessarily memory speed or memory usage. So maybe we can benchmark it somehow. Oh, my camera's off. Sorry. Yeah, they're complaining about slowness, so maybe we can do some benchmarks. I know we have a benchmark library in our framework in here, but I've never really dabbled into core like that.
Right, because otherwise, because I don't think if we look at the rest of it, like we can't get rid of any of the rest of it, right?
Right.
I guess the question is if creation of buffer with the node.js buffer, it's also kind of slow. I think like it was a bug about it like a few months ago as well.
Right, that's sort of my poking at this. Like if they commented this out, rebuilt, and it's still slow, then I don't know that there's anything we can do about it, right? Like if this is the thing that's adding in all the overhead, you know, because we don't, like what happens if you passed in null for the finalizer? Is there, I guess maybe you shouldn't do that because anyway, my thought was, and sanity checked me on this, like that suggestion is like if you try that out, that might help point at whether there's something that can be optimized or not versus. Although I'm not sure we could optimize that either, but
Right. I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I looked at this code some times ago. It's so technically our node.js buffer. It also does quite some allocations because it's kind of we have wrappers around wrappers around wrappers on top of V8 API. Essentially, maybe we can optimize the whole thing, just not calling node.js buffer, but pretty much just using V8 API directly here. That's what we
right, okay.
potentially do. So
Okay.
they kind of improved this API, I would say, a couple of years ago, and we can probably take benefits from it. I mean, in V8.
So the node buffer new is like that's in the core, right? And it's used other places. Is that right?
Right, right.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. So, but you're saying that they've created maybe some other APIs we could possibly use.
Right. My question, like, I just don't know, like, do we have real dependency or do we have real requirement here to use this node.js buffer?
I think like we're creating an external buffer, so it's got to be the same as what Node Core does for buffers. I shouldn't say that. It's got to look the same. Or like everywhere you could use that buffer, a buffer that was created in Node Core, you should be able to use the buffer that this thing creates.
Because technically, if you look at the code, what we have in the core, like see, we kind of wrapping up our finalizer into our class. We pass this class inside of node.js, but node.js in order to pass create finalizer understood by V8, it allocates another kind of wrapper.
Right. Okay. So
So
like
we kind of
flattening the
wrapping this
layers.
our finalizer in something
Right.
else, wrapping our finalizer in something else. Like it's a kind of wrapper.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. So flattening it could make it faster. That's yeah.
So yeah.
We could end up with code that does the same thing, just not using that particular function, right?
Right. Yeah, underneath, if we look inside of what Node.js does, they're using this V8 API. But before we get there, if you see, like we have a chain of allocations, locations,
Yeah.
and which maybe kind of in some tight loops can actually affect people. Some people using with buffers, like just for maybe small things, like people want say associate a couple of GUIDs, and imagine like they
Right.
literally want to have buffer which maybe like 16 bytes or 32 bytes, and suddenly we have like three, four locations, and in overall kind of 32 bytes versus let's say 4 locations of memory, it's where we have a stall.
Right.
It may
Okay.
be kind
Yeah.
of I can if you like I can, for example, prototype what will mean to kind of have implementation which uses V8 implementation directly, and we can actually ask people, we can put it in a separate branch and say like, can you guys compile it and check if it improves your perf?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that'd be cool. Here, I'll put in.
Okay.
Yeah.
VMO.
Sorry,
VM.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So I've seen that some people what they use external buffers for, like they just want to associate effectively some kind of even small data, as they call
Right.
it.
Like doing our own thing. The one risk I could see is like then if something changes in buffer in core and we don't pick it up or something. But like for what you're talking about, it almost makes me wonder if like you'd want like a new in core that did something lighter weight, and then we would use that as well. I don't know. Anyway, it's not. It's good if you're willing to take a look. That would be great.
Yeah, my question was only like, do we really have to have this dependency on this kind of Node.js core buffer or not? Like, I just don't know. Like, is there any kind of any internal requirement you're aware of? That's, I guess, my question is.
I don't think there's something that says we must implement, like must call that method, right? I think it was more back to my like if we've got two things that do the same thing, we now risk one a change in one place and not making the change in the other place, right? Because so it's like that perspective there, people might say, well, now you're duplicating code that does the same thing, and we've got that. That would be more the kind of comments I think we would get versus there's nothing that says that shall call this function in Node API or not, right?
Another aspect here, we also need to remember this caging model of V8. We pretty much, which effectively prohibits using external buffers. So, like you said, in this case, we must copy it, right? Like for example, Electron. The Electron will not able to use its external buffer at all. Electron will require you to copy it.
Right.
Remember,
So and maybe in that, like maybe in the new, it's a buffer. I don't know if it's the copying's happening or not.
right. Okay.
This one, I think it's probably just needs a good CI.
I still don't understand like why CI fails. Like I need to probably look deeper.
Okay,
It only fails for Linux.
okay, but it's consistent.
It's consistent. Like we tried it several times. It's definitely I see like other changes passing, but this specific PR
Okay.
failed. It may be somehow related.
Okay.
I need to look into it.
Okay, any other issues? I don't see anything else. Anything else? Other ones we should chat about? Or...
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks for everybody's time, and we'll see everybody